Hello once again, Internet. Make sure I'm actually live where I should be. It looks like we're good. I'm back again for more Odinmade Hero, a programming series where I learn alongside Casey Muratori. Well, learn from him as he writes Handmade Hero in C and C++, while I'm over here doing it in Odin. And this will be like the last full week of streams for a while, heading into the holidays next week. I'll be taking a bit of a break just to kind of chill out and enjoy the holidays through the new year. And then when I come back, I think we'll do kind of a weekly basis update for the series. So the format will be a little bit different. I'm basically just going to have it be more journalistic, I guess, where I'll keep working through the series, but I'll be taking notes because I'm about to get into all of the rendering stuff. But I think the way to do it properly and then to kind of retrospect that week over week. I hate to use that word, retrospect, but to be able to look back at the things that Casey talked about in each day of Handmade Hero that I was able to get through week over week, and then to kind of reflect on the things about that were interesting or challenging or made me think about other stuff, whatever. And then also the differences that I'm encountering in doing those things in Odin. I suspect a lot of it will just come down to, hey, Odin's array programming just makes a lot of things more fun to do. And then conceptually, it'll really be more about that, because so far it just seems like the really cool thing about Odin is that there just isn't a whole lot of really crazy stuff going on. It's just such a simple language with really a really simple philosophy, which makes it awesome for doing a lot of stuff, because it just gets out of your way unless you focus on whatever the actual thing it is that you're trying to do. So that's been really good, but that's the change that we're heading towards. We're still going to do Monday, Wednesday, Friday this week, and then next week, I think Monday, and then, like I said, I'll take a break through to the following Friday, the week after that. So the last stream will be, let's see here. The last stream of the year will be the 23rd for me. And then I'll come back on the 3rd, which is almost 2 weeks after the 23rd. And then I'll probably stick to like a Monday cadence. So that's the plan. I had to think about it for a few weeks and make sure that was actually what I wanted to do. Just with everything else going on, I've got a clear picture of where it is I need to go and what it is I'm supposed to be doing. And working on learning games programming is a part of this, but something I've realized since starting this channel and doing this stream is that this is definitely a long haul type of endeavor, because doing this learning on stream and kind of showcasing that process of going through and discovering all the little things, like one thing I could do that would be like a more short-term goal is to enter a game jam. And I won't even rule doing something like that out over the next year or so. It's just, that's not something that I'm particularly, I feel particularly motivated to do. I have a better understanding now of like what I would bring to a game project that I was going to work on seriously with other people, or even if it was just totally on my own, if I was trying to do something like that. Like, yeah, it's really hard to articulate some of this stuff, but the bottom line is that there's a specific domain that I need to go after aggressively and commit myself fully to, and I can't do that while also doing this stream 5 days a week or even 3 days a week. I can totally do it once a week, and it'll just be a cool little, devlog type thing where I just periodically update my progress on this, and then we'll see where that goes long term. But it is going to be a long term thing. That's what I've taken away from doing this. It's been meditative. It's been interesting. It's been fun. I've learned a good amount, not even necessarily about programming, or even because, none of the material that I've chewed in. A lot of the stuff in the first 100 days that was kind of hand wavy for me the first time through has stuck more this time. That's for sure. But I've learned more probably just about what makes me tick just doing this thing, because it's been a nice little aside. I've been giving myself more and more room to just do things that aren't strictly work related outside of, all the other things that I do. And the stream has been one of them. It's been fun, but what I've learned from doing this is just pulled me in these other directions. So I'll leave it at that. But as for the topic at hand, we are just wrapping up, as of the last week, a lot of the 3D collision detection stuff that Casey wanted to have the game of Handmade Hero be capable of doing. And so last week that was defining the ground, specifically, and what that means in the context of the game world as you're moving up and down between levels or floors, if you want to call them that. And today we're going to jump into handling traversables in the collision loop. And traversable meaning the ramp. It's weird because we collide with it. Something happens when we collide with it, other than us just getting stopped in our tracks, because we can also traverse it. And it's just weird. This came up on Friday, and I think Casey made a point of adding this to do here, where maybe we can remove collides and Z supported. It's just you have all these different understandings of what a moving entity does, how it behaves when it moves. Does it collide? Is it movable at all? Is it Z supported? Is it traversable? And these things kind of overlap, and it's just an evolution of how things have gone. And Casey kind of had to get through it to get it to this point where it's okay, this is how we're going to think of this as. It's traversable, so you can kind of climb on top of it, and that sends you up in the Z dimension, or maybe you can go underneath it, which would mean, if it's a bridge, right? Let's say there was just a bridge in a level, but you wanted to go underneath it. It would be, I don't know, because then you're traversing underneath it, but you're not really on top of it. So maybe traversable only means being able to go on top of something. See, there's just so much nuance to it that it's what are we even talking about here when we use these different flags to describe things? So we'll just keep on working towards wrapping this stuff up so we can get to the software render. With that being said, I'll let Casey kick things off.
And there we go. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a sleepy morning edition of Handmade Hero. We are getting started late today because, honestly, I was just too tired. So I was drinking my coffee, and we were chatting while trying to get to the point where our brains might actually function to do some programming, because we do have some programming to do today, and it is not the absolutely trivial variety. We are going to go in and modify our stand-in collision detection loop to do some new stuff that we wanted to do in terms of working with entities that define the walkable regions and the ground in the game. And of course, the reason we're doing this is because we want to be able to have rich three-dimensional constructions in our game. Even though it is a 2D game, we want to be able to do things like rooms on top of rooms that you can see down into other rooms from, and ledges you can jump off of and land on lower ones. Again, this is not necessarily because we feel like this is crucial to the game design or anything like that. As is typical on Handmade Hero, it's more about making sure that we don't shy away from solving the harder problems in any particular game space. And so the fact that this is something that is raised by the type of game, I want to tackle it head on and show everyone how to tackle these kinds of problems. Even if we, in the end, don't really decide to use it very heavily in the actual game design, we still want to make sure that our engine tech is, top-notch. And I feel like this is the kind of thing that you know, if I were looking at some kind of a 2D engine licensable thing, right, I want to know that it's got a really nice, robust system that allows me to define these nice 3D things, even in my 2D game, so that it all works kind of seamlessly and feels good and doesn't have janky corner cases, where as a designer, when I'm making my game in it, I gotta be like, oh, I gotta hack all this stuff in and add all these other special checks to sort of approximate the fact that it's gonna be in 3D, right? So we kind of talked about this yesterday. I highly recommend watching yesterday's stream before this one, if you haven't already, because we kind of talked about exactly what we wanted to do as our first attempt at solving some of the ground specification problems, because it's a little bit of an open-ended sort of thing, since there's a lot of ways you could imagine doing it, and there's questions about, you know, what do you think would be the most effective. And so I'm just going to go ahead and start programming stuff that we said we were going to program yesterday. We added all of the infrastructure we needed to do that, but we haven't actually done the computation on it yet, and so that's what we're going to be doing today, is writing that computation, and then playing around with it to see if it does what we need it to do. So with that in mind, I will just remind everyone that if you wanted to follow along with the source code and you have pre-ordered the game, today is day 80. Which is our second week of programming, right? 1 hour a day, 80 hours, that's 2 40-hour work weeks. We are finishing up our second full week of programming. Very exciting here on Handmade Hero. But that means that if you have that source code zip, you want to unpack day 79 out of it, because that is the source code that I'm starting with now. And so let's see how sleepy we actually are. Let's go ahead and bring up those collision detection routines and see if we just stare at them blankly, going, I don't know what all these letters and numbers on the screen mean, or whether we actually, whether the coffee has kicked in to the point where we actually can write some code that makes sense. All right. So the first thing that I'm going to do is take a look at, sort of doing an as simple as possible modification of the loop. Because again, we'll probably do some significant upgrades to this collision loop in terms of robustness and performance and everything else. So we don't really care necessarily how efficient this loop is right now. As long as we think we can make it efficient later, that's fine. So really what we want to do here is take a look at this loop and go, well, looking at this loop, what can we do to sort of tackle this thing we were talking about yesterday, which is this right here, right? We want to turn our loop that was looping on one type of t value to something that loops on two type of t values. We want to say, all right, find the minimum t that is where we would stop if we were going to hit solid entities. That's what we're already doing. Let's augment this loop to also have a second t value, which is the maximum distance you could go in the entities that are representing empty space, right? So we're doing our own kind of constructive solid geometry here, merging things together. So that's what we're doing. And that means we've got to sort of upgrade this t handling. So if you look here on each iteration of the loop, you can see that we've got the tmin, and that tmin is exactly what we were working with in terms of entities getting hit. So what we want to do is introduce another one here, I think, tmax, which is saying this is how far you could go maximally. And obviously at the outset, tmax is going to be equal to 0, because at the outset of the loop, we have no idea how far you could go before hitting a boundary of one of these solid objects. And so if you know, I thought of something else we're probably going to have to add for this, and it's something that's pretty good to talk about, so that's good. But anyway, we'll get that in a second. And so what we want to do is we want to look at the entities now, and obviously we've got some that are operating on tmin already, and that's good. That's exactly what we want. But what we want to do now is also take a look at entities that would affect our tmax. So we do can collide, and we go through and you know, check the things that we collide against. And in fact, I think we probably want to move this inside. This is an interesting early out, I guess. But for now, I guess let's go ahead and just and just do this here. So we're going to go ahead and add that can collide on the inside. So after we start looping through the volumes, and we're going to do a volume check, I guess the way that I would say it is when we, well, no, you know what? Let's make two checks here, because we sort of have two kinds. This is like our early out, if you will, right? It's our thing that says, do we need to do any checking on this guy at all? And it feels like we probably want to leave something like that in place. So I guess we'll actually just do two checks, right? We'll see whether there's any kind of collision that's going to happen here at all. And then we also need to say later what kind of collision that actually is. So when we go through this, what we would say is, all right, if it's something that we can collide with in some way, then we go ahead and set up the collision computation. When we do the collision computation, we then actually want to do these tests differently, right? So right now what we're doing is we're testing the four walls of the bounding box for whatever the entity is. We want to go ahead and do this so that instead of looking for the minimum t, it's going to look for the maximum t. And I feel like probably the easiest way to write that right now is to have test wall compute both. And then at the end, we will just do whichever one is, you know, whichever one is the one we actually wanted to pick. Now the problem with that is the test wall normal stuff. That's going to be a little janky, because we don't actually know. We need to know which of the two, whether tmin test or tmax test, which one was hit potentially, I guess. No, that's not true. That's not true, I suppose. Well, you know, I mean, this is what I'm thinking. We have this test wall call, and inside the test wall call, right? I'm just trying to think of how to structure this the most effectively. Inside the test wall call, what we're doing is we're checking to see whether or not the hit was earlier than it used to be, right? And in fact, this is that test right there, right? Saying if this test is earlier, then we're going to accept it. And if we want to add a thing here that says if this test was larger than the tmax, accept it for the tmax hit as well. So again, I don't know. It seems like to me almost that we want to actually just have two different loops here, which is kind of annoying to say the least. But I don't know. I mean, maybe that's just what has to happen. So it would look something like this if we were to do it that way, right? It would look something like this, where we have one of them here, and we have exactly the same code duplicated for the max on the other side. Now, I feel like that's a little bit ugly, so I'm wondering too if maybe we wouldn't turn this into something that just loops over data, right? Which seems kind of plausible. Maybe I'll give that a shot first. So let's the way that I'm thinking about it is basically this test wall. We've sort of manually made this a loop over data by repeating the code and then plugging the data in right in each individual case. And so what I could do is loft that into some actual data, right? And then just do a for I loop over it. And that would give me the opportunity to do that for I loop in two different ways without having it be particularly problematic, right? And again, since we don't super care about the performance of this routine at the moment, that is probably fine. We don't have to think too hard about it. So I kind of want to lean towards a thing that's going to be the easiest to type in. So let's try that, right? Let's go ahead and say, okay, if zero this out, seems like.
Hold on while I do some cleanup here. Okay, so he's just gonna say he doesn't want this code right now. Sure. Oh, and now we don't have that, so that's a problem. Maybe he'll just pull that out of that if zero then. Really slow start to this week. My brain just feels foggy from the weekend, I guess.
Good idea. If zero this out, and let's turn this into an actual for loop. So if we were going to turn this into a for loop, and it looks something like this, wall index equals 0, wall index is less than array count walls, something like this, wall index plus plus. And then we're just going to do this once. I guess that's technically up there. We're just going to do that like so. And each wall, so I don't know what we'll call this.
Okay. I think I see where this is going. So we'll just go ahead and he's going to need this out here, unless we're just going to get rid of that. But for now, I'll assume that we won't. Okay, so that goes in there. And I don't know where walls came from, to be honest. For wall index in the length of walls. What walls? There are no walls. This would be like that or something, right? So walls doesn't exist, but that's fine. Presumably we'll have walls eventually.
A test wall, I'm not sure. Each wall, we will loop through, walls plus wall index, and we will just grab out of that all of these values that we were going to use previously, right? So we'll basically say, all right, yeah, we've got, the wall min corner x, so I guess.
Okay, we're just gonna create a thing. I kind of just want to say this, wherever walls comes from, I want it to be a dynamic array, or a slice, I guess, so that I don't have to keep track of the index.
Let's just do that. The wall relative. What are these? What are these actually? In fact, they're just these. So it'd be this, right? So there we go. We'd get rid of tmin, but everything else would just be in there. And so the test wall is just wall x, wall. I guess this is wall x, wall rel x, wall rel y, wall player delta x, wall player delta y. Maybe I'll just change this to be calling delta x and delta y, so on. And then got the min y and the max y, right? And so we'll call that test wall function like that. And now that allows us to data drive this this call so that we can, and this is the exact same here. Test wall normal would be equal to wall normal. That allows me to just build a data structure that will allow this loop to drive. And then we don't have this code spammed out here. So if we want to duplicate this loop twice, it's not such a big deal, right? So that also allows me to move this inside, potentially, since we want to do this check 2 different ways, one with a min confirmation and one with a max confirmation. So I'm going to go ahead and do that as well, although I guess I'll do it in 2 steps to make debugging a little bit easier. So let's go ahead and now turn this into data. So we now want to take all of these things that used to be actually spammed out as individual calls here and make them into data, right, like so. So here's all my values, minus the min test, so that's gone, right? And I guess I think I accidentally removed that entirely. So in here, after that delta y, we do need tmin to be here. So we want tmin test to be in there as well. So there min to be here. So we want tmin test to y. We do need tmin to be here. So we want tmin test.
Okay. It's hard to see all the params that this procedure is getting. So we have the wall x. Wait, what? Yeah. Okay. The delta x and delta y. Tmin test will go over here. And then we have wall min y and wall next y. Okay.
To be in there as well. So there we go. So that's really all I'm talking about here, right? I guess we need that wall normal as well, so let's grab that and stick that in there. So now we've got an easy way to data drive this. And that's a good technique, especially in situations like this where, you know, our primary concern here is not the performance right now. So we don't really have to worry too much about how we structure this. We just want to make sure we structure it in a way that's, you know, reasonable and more or less easy for us to modify right now. And then we can kind of go through later, once everything's said and done and we're in a more performance-oriented mindset, we can sort of attack this later on. Because obviously there's no difference between these two things. If later we needed to pull this back out into some more explicit code, we could always do that. So.
Interesting. So walls, I don't think we defined that type anywhere. But it's going to be a test wall. And I wonder if you can just, is it like this? Where you can like infer or imply the length with a question mark. I can't remember. I think it's something like that in Odin. So it's just going to be all of this stuff. Wow, this is... Whoops. We're very crowded right now. And I'm very indented. I'm missing all of this editor real estate out here. Okay, so that will look something like that, I guess. Something like that. That can go away. So we don't have a test wall. Okay, so we're still calling this test wall. We're still calling this test wall proc. I started looking at his code down here and I was like, speculative collide, where did that code come from? I'm just a bit all over the place. Okay. So yeah, I guess we just pull all of these out from all of these calls. And worry about what this type is supposed to look like later. How do I want to do that? Okay, that's 3. And That'll be 4. Okay, so we have our test walls here. It's just been long enough since I've written all of this that I don't even know what all of these are for. The relative X and Y I see are from the wall. And then, yeah, this is dependent on, like, these all flip if you're testing a wall in the Y direction too. So it's just it's a bit much to wrangle. Get my head back inside of what this is even doing. But it's just testing to see if we, you know, hit it right. And then if it did track the wall normal. Okay. Okay. Sure. Nothing too crazy about that.
Right. So there's our fault for walls, and here's our wall testing. And honestly, I think that may just work. All we need to do now is actually define this test wall, and that's going to be exactly this stuff, right? Like so. So we have our x, we have our rel x, we have our rel y, we have our delta x, we have our delta y.
The problem is sometimes x is y, and rel x and y is rel y and x, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's, yeah, it's always the same. No, it is. Yeah, you flip it if you're dealing with, you know, the y coordinate. So it's just a bit weird. I wish there was conceptually a better way to think of this in terms that would make it more intuitive to me, but it may just be a level of exposure I don't have. That'll come with time. Okay, so if I go to this call here, we can define that test wall. It's our struct here with x, rel x, and rel y, delta x. I kind of want to make these v2s, you know, like rel could be a v2, delta could be a v2. Yeah, same thing with the min and max. T-min, and then min, y, max y. Yeah, because then you're not really concerned about the naming of it, right? Yeah, that's interesting. Anyway, these are all going to be floats, and so now this should be happy. Oh no, what happened? Oh, I was in the wrong place. Let's go over here. Okay, and we can't do that with this. What is tmin test? It should just be tmin, which should be a float. Kind of looks like I'm missing a parameter here. Cannot assign, oh, because it's a pointer. Well, that makes sense. Okay.
We have our min and max, and that's it. We have too many, oh right, and we need to remember our normal, which is not something that's actually being passed. So that's actually our normal. There we go. And so let's make sure that that is still working at all, right? So that appears to be working just fine. So that's actually our normal. There we go.
I guess he didn't make the tmin part of the struct. I thought I saw that he did. I also didn't see that he was passing the normals in, but I guess I should have realized that we would need those. Okay, so let's get rid of tmin and add the normal. That's right. Yeah, I remember now, because that's how we assign. That's where this comes from, right? And then test wall is probably just going to take a wall and the tmin test. I think I get it. So in that case, I can just get rid of these and replace them with all the normals. So yeah. Okay, let's just do that real quick. If I can remember how to yank code properly. Oh no. Closed my whole editor. Didn't mean to do that. Okay, we're back. So let's just drop this here, flip that for Y, and is that right? Yeah, that's right. And then this normal will be negative, whoops, did that wrong. This one will be negative in the X direction, and then this one is positive. We still need that. Okay. And then same thing here. That's right, we still need closing brackets on all these. Okay. Looking good. What is the problem with this? Did we change the definition of this? I don't remember doing that. Oh, because tmin is the last parameter. Okay, yeah, this should be collapsed now at this point, so that we don't have all of these parameters being passed in, because they're all coming off the wall. Just pass in the wall. Okay. JC asked, what are you building? I am simply learning how to build a game. Granted, there's a lot more that I'm learning than I probably need to learn by following the Handmade Hero series by this guy, Casey. Also, hello, Galactic Past. But he kind of did this, started this series off about 10 years ago, showing people how to build game engine components from scratch. And I've been wanting to learn games programming for a long time, so I just started digging into this series first with Zig and now with Odin. And so I don't have a specific vision in mind, right? Which is why this series works for me, because I'm not trying to build and release a game on Steam in the next 6 months or anything like that. Not that I might change my mind and do something. I don't think I would try and release a game on Steam, but I would try and make like a game for a game jam, to enter into a game jam. That would probably be the first thing I would do before seriously considering committing to a project big enough to, actually go all the way to putting it on Steam. But I'm just nowhere near that point. And I don't know if I ever will be on my own, to be honest with you. Like, I just don't have an inspiration to make a game that is complete, even if it's really modest in scope. Something like a 2 to 3 hour game with enough content to keep you kind of to make a game that is worthy of your attention for like a full 2 to 3 hours. I don't have a vision for what that looks like. That could come together at some point if I understand what it is that I want to do, but I'm not there, right? Perhaps someday. But for right now, it's just satisfying and fun for me to learn different stuff, and take that and just kind of build a tool set, a skill set with games programming that would let me potentially work, to your point, galactic past, would allow me to be able to contribute either at a AAA or an indie. But it would have to be a really good fit for me. It would have to come together organically and make a lot of sense. They always talk about like company culture and things like that. But like, would I get along with those people? Would I fit well in that environment? Are they making a game that I actually believe is worth making? And that'd be a very privileged position to find myself in. So I don't expect that circumstance will emerge, at least not without me getting much deeper into this games programming journey. So, but I would totally entertain it. To answer your question, it's just I'm not actively pursuing joining an indie or AAA company because I don't want to just settle for the first gig that comes my way, and especially right now when, I mean, it's probably always true that there's a ton of competition in games, but right now the nature of the job market is just that games have seen tons and tons of cuts over the last year or two. It's not a very bullish gaming industry situation right now. So it's really more about the journey for me right now. It's not, I think at one point I probably had a strong urge to just get, into a games company like at the earliest opportunity when I started thinking about, doing this series and learning games programming at all. But since then, it has just become less about, changing jobs and more about like, just this is kind of fun to do and learn. So there you go. Okay, so I think actually we're ready for Casey to show us what's next.
And so let's make sure that is still working at all, right? So that appears to be working just fine. So that's all.
Maybe not. Maybe I should make sure that my code actually works. So I mean, that loop should work the same exactly as how this code was working before. So maybe I can just build and run here. Tmax is declared but not used. Well, shut up about it. All right, so far so good. So this is our little thing that we've been working on. It's just what Casey has been showing us how to do. Nothing more, nothing less. All right, we can, oh wow. Well, that's busted. I don't think, it must have something to do with the Z stuff, but the rock got stuck on the monster. It's not supposed to. And because it got stuck, I'm guessing it registered the hit, and so it lost all its, it registered the hit to the monster over and over again. So now it just doesn't have any health. It should have passed through it, done 1 unit of damage, and then disappeared, but that's broken now. So we're in a busted state. Oh, whoops. Sorry about that. I forgot that I switched over to Casey here. My bad. I don't think I changed anything. But you can see I've just got the same thing going on as Casey. And it's not much of a game, really. We've just got kind of the bones for a game engine, but it's all still very primitive. But you see we can go up and down this ramp, and we can, oh yeah, this is what I was showing. See, the rock is getting stuck on this monster here, and it's just not doing what it should be doing. But all these changes are kind of in flight at the moment. So, but if you join an engine team or a graphics programming team, I don't think the company will let you go. I mean, I'd like to think that's the case, but you never know. Economic circumstances, like even a really successful studio with lots of talented people can shut down just because, the money's not making sense for the studio to stay open. One thing that Casey has said many times is obviously, like, if you're really, really good at, whatever your specialty is, graphics, game engine tools, and whatever it is, if you're really good at whatever that thing is, the odds of you not being able to find work are pretty low. He said that time and time again. He's never seen like a really good person at engine programming be out of the job, because it probably is pretty true. Even if full-time work isn't on the table, to be able to do like contract work, right, as an engine programmer, seems like something that, you know, you could do, especially if you had like the resume to back it up. The difference is, I guess I just don't have that pedigree. So somebody would have to be, I would have to get into an interview situation where the people I'm talking to can see the body of work that I've done here on this channel, right, with the Handmade Hero stuff, and they would have to be able to appreciate it for what it is, enough to the point to where they could, you know, take me on faith and the idea that I've gotten this far on my own, even though I don't have any like titles under my belt. Like I've never worked on a games team before, you know. And you know, maybe that could happen. I don't know. I'm not ruling it out. I'm totally open to the idea of something like that happening, but it would just have to be the right fit is all. Okay, so yeah, I think we're good to go here. Let's keep moving on.
Good. No problems there. All right, and yeah, everything's still good. We can walk through things. Perfect. So let's take this the next step further. Let's move test wall into there so that we're not actually calling it anymore, so that we actually just have this called directly embedded. So what that's going to look like, right, is this. So inside here, we're going to actually do this case inside here, right? That's what we were doing before. We're going to get rid of all of this. And we can actually lock some things out pretty trivially here.
Okay, so it looks like instead of doing this, let me go ahead and grab this code out of here. So that result doesn't matter because that's just whatever we're assigning this to. And it's literally just, yeah, all this right here. Damn it, that was one indent too many. There we go. Okay, so now that looks pretty good. Except this is going to be, yeah, no, that's not going to work the way that, well, actually, I guess it will. Because the wall X is just whatever, yeah, he instantiates it to. Okay. Is that right, though? Yeah, it is X. I feel like it shouldn't be X. It should be, like, plane. Like, it's the plane that the wall faces or is on. You know, whether it's X or Y. I don't know. And then this should be wall delta X. Same thing with that. Yeah, and then this wall delta X, wall relative Y. Just all of these need to be prefixed here. And then tmin isn't a pointer here, so I think we can just overwrite it. And then this is what that result is the hit this bool. And then, yeah, the test wall normal needs to be overwritten too. This is not fun. I do not like how indented I am right now. Okay, let's just double check, make sure that this is all correct. We don't need to care about the wall index because we just pull it out of the list. And it doesn't even need to be dynamic for now. Wow, I didn't even it didn't even occur to me that this actually worked. The question mark was correct. You know, if we knew ahead of time that we only wanted to test 4 walls, I could do that, but I can also just let Odin infer the length of it for me. So that's nice. Okay, so we got our T epsilon. All the rest of this should basically mean that if I rerun it again, we'll be in the exact same place. And of course, I have forgotten to... Oh man, what was that? What line was that at? 383. Can I type correctly? Is it even possible? Is it at all possible for me to quit screwing up here? Okay. Yeah, everything should be working the same. That's actually less broken now, so that's interesting. It wouldn't. It shouldn't have taken out 2 health squares from the monster, but yeah, we're still in the middle of this change, so no big deal. All boils down to your personal connections, huh? Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. I mean, if I just wanted a job, I would just go after like the first thing I could find, you know, where they would hire me. But I'm not going to find myself in a position where I'm working for a game studio that's really got where like the leadership and like all of the people, you know, that actually run the business of the company all have the same mission as me in terms of like just making awesome games and making them as good as they can be. That's going to be hard to find. You know, the one studio that's been kind of like championing that as a mission statement is Larian, right? They're the ones that did Baldur's Gate 3 and all. But I don't even know if they do remote work. And I mean, I'm sure it would surprise me if they don't have some devs working for them that are remote. But generally speaking, I think they're like a studio based out of, you know, wherever they are. I think it's somewhere back east. And I'm not willing to relocate, right, to go work on games for a living. Like, that's just not something that's going to be in the cards for me, I don't think. I would move if I absolutely had to. But, yeah. But yeah, it really does come down to, like, who do you know who knows that you know what you know good enough to be good in X role for whatever company, right? I think I've got enough generalist understanding of games programming at this point to where I could be slotted in as like an entry level, you know, developer on almost any domain. Like even if it was graphics at this point, I think I'd be able to hit the ground running. But part of the point of this stream is to build up the skill set so that I can actually go and do whatever it is I want, whether it's my own project or elsewhere. You never know what could happen. And over the course of time, I could make that personal connection, and it could happen. You never know, right? So for now, I continue to learn, and I continue to do this thing that feels meditative to me, or where I'm just, you know, taking it one day at a time, trying to get a little bit better at this. Okay.
I guess all we really need to do is just make these operate off of that pointer, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and do that. So all of the wall stuff is this way. There we go. And t result is just a thing we computed, and then t min is this guy right here. All right. So this is t min test, right? Like so. And we don't have to do pointers to it anymore. We can just use the actual value. So t min test like so. I think that's most of what we need to do there. So there's our wall.
I see. I didn't quite catch that. This is supposed to use the tmin test because we're not updating tmin, right? So that could explain why the behavior was a little bit different. I think now if I try and throw the rock, we're going to get stuck. Again. Yeah, see that? Okay. So we're back.
There and there. And that looks good. So let's see. Okay. So now we've basically collapsed all that down into a little loop. It looks pretty nice. So here we go, and that all seems to still work pretty good. Go out here, test against all these guys. Everything looks good. Yeah, so pretty happy with that. Can we still shoot? Oh man, did we break our hit testing for against the Monstar? I feel like we did, right? It's not doing that anymore. I wonder, that doesn't have anything to do with what we were doing, does it? We just didn't test that in a while. Double check. Yeah, so we got a bug there we should take a look at.
Interesting. So his bug actually looks different from mine, which is not great. I don't love that. So mine is still doing, I'm still doing damage, but I won't pass, the rock that I'm slinging won't pass through the monster, quote unquote. It gets stuck on him. So I'm doing the damage, but the collision is not like resetting. Like the rule is not being reset, so it's just colliding and then getting stuck. It's just being set wrong. The fact that it's different from his, but it's still bugged, is really annoying because, you know, that's just... It's not a good feeling, but it happens all the time. So it's like I feel like I just got to get used to feeling that way. Like, oh, what did I do different? This is messed up. Jonathan Paul said, "You're consistent day 80. That's impressive." Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's weird. It doesn't feel like it's been 80 days. It feels like I just started off on day 25. What was that? It feels like I started it off yesterday, but that was already coming up on 3 months ago. So... But I am, like I said, so I said it at the beginning of the stream, but since most of you weren't here when I started the stream off, I just mentioned earlier on that I'm going to be tapering off the stream a little bit and changing the format a little bit, and it's going to become more of like a, here's what I did this week with Odinmade Hero, here's the days that I got through, and here's some notes, and here's some interesting things that I tried. It's going to be more of like a, kind of like a devlog thing as I work through it, rather than me coding side by side with Casey, because at this point the issues that I run into on stream are less interesting, and there's nothing stopping me from talking about the things that are interesting after the fact. It's just, it's not fun for me to, you know, like, why am I having this bug where things look different? That's not a fun feeling. Maybe it's amusing to watch me get stuck on stuff and bang my head against the wall, but it's not, you know, there's many other ways you can entertain yourself than by watching me suffer as I make mistakes. But I think it'll be more worthwhile for me to share, okay, here's what I learned this week. Here's what I thought was interesting. Here's how it ties into some other stuff. I think once I kind of change things up in that way, it'll just free me to be more productive with my time. Because I always said it, this is a weird, difficult format, because he's coding live and he's making mistakes as he's coding live, and then I'm doubling down on some of those mistakes by writing the same things that he's writing, which may be mistakes, or I'm making my own. As you can see here, we have a totally different bug from him. Anyway, and I'll try that out for a while, and if that doesn't feel right, if it doesn't come out well, then I can always switch back and continue to do the, you know, side by side sort of post hoc pair programming. I don't know what to call it. But yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Someone remind me to take a look at that. It doesn't really matter at this point because, like I said, we're still playing with all this stuff, but we should. It probably has something to do with the fact that we have changed the 3D-ness of everything, and maybe that sword no longer overlaps the guy when it passes through or something like that. But, all right, ignoring that, moving on. So what we want to do here is also have something where we test, you know, in entities that we would consider inside entities, like those empty space entities. We want to do this testing a little bit differently. So we would basically say, you know, if we're testing for an inside entity, we do this, right? And if we're testing for an opaque one, we do this other thing, right? So let's go ahead and introduce a second loop here that we're going to do for things that are inside entities, and that would be, that would be a double if actually, because we have to see, we only do it for things that we're currently inside. If I think about it correctly, right? You want to find the maximum t for the empty space entities that you're actually inside. So here's that secondary type of test, and really the difference here is that instead of tmin test, we're going to be using tmax test. So this is tmax test, this is tmax test, like so. If we were doing it this way, we need to reverse the sense of these. So basically, we want to make sure that whatever the result is greater than 0, and then we want to say, all right, whatever, excuse me, whatever this max is, we want to accept at any time that the tmax test is less than the t result. So if we were going to have a hit that was further away now, before we were testing for hits that were closer, now we want to test for hits that are further away than the best one we've got so far. And then when we come in here, I don't know what we would want to do epsilon-wise. The reason we had epsilons before is to stop you a little bit before you got to the wall. And in this particular case, I don't know how much we care about that exactly. We do have a bit of a problem, which is you are never allowed to be outside of these. And so I feel like, probably what we want to do is we want to stop you exactly on one and perhaps do, like a fix-up afterwards to make sure that you're always inside, right? We want to keep you constrained to the outside, to the inside of these as much as possible. So for now, we're just going to say that this is going to be t result, like so. We've already tested it against 0, so we know it's not a hit that's behind us, so that seems fine. And test while normal, in this case, we have 2 of these, so we're going to have a test while normal on the min side and a test while normal on the max.
Thank you. Love you. My poor wife is getting the kids are giving her a real hard time today. So she's getting just kind of overstimulated with the screams. I can hear them. I can hear them through the walls. So I got to wrap this up so that I can get out there and relieve her. But she still brought me tea. She's just, I don't know how she does it, because I don't have the same level of patience. I wish I did, but I don't have to be out there with them in the killing fields that is our living room, day in and day out. Kids are a lot of fun, but man, can they just drive you wild with the incessantly trying to do things that will hurt themselves or others around them, or just cause lots of damage. It's just a perk of them being really young. Everything is amazing, and it's all equally destroyable. Okay, so this is just getting really out of hand, this formatting. Don't like it. I'm trying to make it work, but it displeases me. You see, I'm having to break up these if statements, and it's just barely working. You see down here too, I got the same problem. Just knock that down. Just try and keep things somewhat sane, but we are quickly running out of room here. Yeah, what was he saying here? We have the max. Test wall normal max. I see. Because wherever this is, yeah, we want another one of those. I'll just say test wall normal max. And then what should T... I guess T max test should probably be 0. Is that right? Worry about that later. Okay, so then this should be assigned to that. And I think we might be good now. I kind of want to stash all this and see in what way that collision code with the rock, was it broken or was it working? Oh no, it's been, okay. So that is from a change before today, which is good to know, but it's bad because it means that even before we started today off, we had a bug with that code. It kind of looks to me like it's just a flag that's messed up somewhere. So it doesn't seem like it should be too bad to deal with. It's just tracking that down is going to be a bit ugly. Hopefully it just winds up something being easy to figure out, but we'll see. Galactic Pass said, will you consider branching off from Handmade Hero? I think you have enough base knowledge and you can just do your own stuff. You're probably right. It's just... I could totally go off and do my own stuff and have it be really rudimentary at this point. I think that's true. But the stuff that I really want to learn how to do, which is more of like the graphics programming stuff with like animation and lighting and all these things. We haven't really scratched the surface with any of that. And so to get that knowledge, I'm going to have to keep following. But it was always my intention to branch off eventually, right? Because eventually I will be in a position where it's like, yeah, I can code all the things that I would want to code, and I have enough of a conceptual understanding of how to do X, Y, and Z to where I could go and make my own game. But the problem is that I just feel pulled in a bunch of different directions right now, because, and Casey has talked about this before, but not Handmade Hero, but games programming, games in general, are not just very deep in a lot of ways, but it's wide. Like there's so many areas of specialization and they all go very deep. And for me, one that I can't get out of this series, and it's also one that is just kind of not even specific to games, is music and kind of more of the sound aspect of games. Like Handmade Hero doesn't really go into any of that. There's a little bit of the audio stuff that happens in the first 20 days or so, but if I'm going to get an understanding of how to do music really well for games and do music production, that's a totally different, what I do to learn that skill set looks totally different from programming it, right? From doing any sort of programming. Not that programming wouldn't be involved to some extent, obviously, once you get far enough, when you have all the sound effects that you want and you have all the pieces that you want. But that's the direction I feel myself going in right now. And so that means I have to focus on that and ease off of the programming stuff a little bit. Then why not learn OpenGL or Vulkan? I actually have been learning Vulkan a little bit on the side. It's just hard because there's a lot of like just boilerplate stuff, right, to Vulkan. And I've done it once before, but I'm doing it again now. And it's just slow and steady wins the race, right? Like I'm not in a hurry to do these things because there really is no hurry. It's just what is actually intriguing me the most that I want to do. And right now I find that that's music, probably above anything else. But I still want to keep doing the actual programming. So I'll keep following Handmade Hero and we'll see where it goes. But I'll be here every week at least, and so you can catch up with me and see where I'm at and see what the progress is. It's gonna slow down on the games programming front, but it's going to be I'm turning the dial up to 11 for music here, and that's just something that I didn't know that that's where this was gonna go. But more and more I've realized in the past like month or so that that's what I need to turn my attention to. So hopefully that helps you understand where I'm at.
Side, right? We want to track both of those. So we have test roll normal min and max, and we've got our tmin test, and we've got our tmax test, which I guess is just 0, to start with. So there we go. We come through here. We do our tmax test. We now have that computed. And so at the end of this, we actually know both of these. I suppose for these two things, I don't really know exactly what we want to do. It's a good question in terms of these guys. I suppose for now, let's do this handling separately since it's going to be pretty different probably. So this is the case where we were, hitting something that was going to stop us. This is the case where we're hitting something that isn't going to stop us, that's allowing us to move. So assuming that we hit it, we now would say, well, we don't need to do the speculative collision stuff probably. We do need to say that our hit wall normal max is equal to our test wall normal max. Our hit entity max is going to be equal to our test entity, and our tmax is going to be tmax test, right? And similarly, our roll normal min here is going to be equal to our test roll normal min. Now, I guess technically, so since we only...
Interesting. So this stays here, but this was supposed to be in this else. Is that right? Did I see that right? Yeah, it is. Okay, I just didn't catch that. Or maybe he just moved that and I wasn't paying enough attention. But it looks like this goes inside of here. Oh, man. That is atrocious. I hate having to do stuff like this. we go. Okay, so this test wall normal assignment should be off of the test wall normal min, and then this also changed. Did he mean to do that?
To our test wall normal min. Now, I guess technically, so since we only do one of these,
that doesn't seem right. Isn't the wall normal just always going to be the wall normal? Okay, so I need to copy. Well, I'll just copy this. And then here, what even is this check supposed to be? He never added this check. The way that he does things, I just like the order in which he writes this stuff out sometimes, just like, I mean, I kind of get it because he has it in his head. He knows what needs to happen, but I feel like I'm missing some crucial information here that tells me whether or not, you know, I want to do this check for the T-min, T-max test, and then the test wall normal max, etc. versus the versus the min. I mean, I know we blackboarded it last week, but that was last week, man. You can't expect me to keep that inside of my head all weekend long, can you? Okay, so this should be testing if we actually hit this. And then over here, yeah, this is weird. Test wall, normal, min. And then over here, yeah, we don't have a wall, normal, min and max. We just have, let's see, that should be max. And then that's max. Okay. I didn't see him change this to keep track of two wall normals, but maybe he did.
and similarly, our wall normal min here is going to be equal to our test wall normal min. Now, I guess technically, so since we only do one of these loops, I suppose we actually don't need to do, we don't need to have two test sets, right? Since we can get rid of this, right? This is gone. This could really, we could just leave it as test wall normal, right? And in fact, this guy goes inside the secondary loop. So we could just say, all right, test wall normal, that's just going to be test wall normal, right? No big deal, test wall normal, test wall normal. And this guy can do it the same way. So it's really only that outer one that actually needs to be specified as both the min and the max. All right, so we got.
I see now. Well, that answers that. This should always be just a regular test wall normal. I don't know if that's the case for the T min and max. Probably not. But up here, we just have two of these. Okay, so down here, that is that, and that is that. And then the same thing here. We assign that. And there we go. Okay. Now I think we're good. Did he ever change those conditionals? No, we still don't know what the condition is. But that's okay, I guess. The only potential hurry is GPT v8, which could create entire games from scratch. Yeah, I'm not betting on that one. I do think that it's going to replace some aspects of game development or make those aspects faster, cheaper to do. I can't really speak to what that'll look like. you know, I do think at the end of the day, anything that's actually interesting is always going to be done by a human. Just intuitively, I think that's always going to be the case. But it'll just change what the job looks like, right? And that's why, like, originally when I started doing this, it was like, oh, I guess I'll just, you know, learn graphics, or not graphics, but learn games programming until something interests me enough to like specialize in it. And the two things that have done really grab my attention as far as that goes are music and graphics. And music is even more general than graphics, right? Because music, it doesn't have to just be used in games, right? It can be used in and the same thing for graphics programming, I guess, too. Not just used for games, but music has more applications outside of just like, you know, doing programming. It's the fact that it's not specifically programming work is actually an aspect of it that excites me, because it's just a totally different skill set, works different parts of my brain, inspires me in different ways that programming can't really ever do. Am I using Emacs or Vim? I'm using NeoVim with the WesTerm as the terminal emulator.
Got test roll normal min, test roll normal max, like so. And at the end, now we just have to do some thinking about what's actually going to happen depending on which one of the this is. And right, I needed the hit entity min and max as well. So that comes up here as hit entity min and hit entity max. So
okay, so hit entity max. Which does not exist until we add it. Okay, good to go.
I guess what we'd want to do now is we want to see which of our t-mins was sooner, right? So what we want to do is say something like, you know, pick one here. So we want to say if our t-min is less than our t-max, that means that we hit somebody who was opaque and he stopped us, right? A solid entity stopped us from moving. So if that's the case, then what we would like to do is we want to introduce here, because t-min is going to be used to compute the actual motion, we want to introduce a thing here which is t-stop, something like that, right? And so our t-stop is something that we're going to initialize depending on which side of this we take, right? Like that. So if the t-min is less than the t-max, then the stopping value is the minimum. And if the t-stop, if the other way around, then the t-stop is whatever the maximum one we hit is. And that determines what our hit entity is. I guess we'll call it our stop entity. Well, no, our hit entity is fine, right? So our hit entity equals our hit entity min in this case, and our wall normal equals our wall normal min, right? Like so, max, max, max. And those things can now move down, I believe, meaning that, for example, hit entity was and wall normal, those used to be defined at the top, and now they're going to be defined here because they actually this is where they actually get used, like so on. And so that just allows us to take whichever one of those we want. Now we haven't filled in these two.
Okay, so we have a wall normal that is a v3, and then the hit entity, it's a sim entity, right? Oops. Oh, and then t-max. Where did t-max come from? I guess wherever t-min is, we can just slot that in. And then hit entity min. Oh, it's a pointer to a sim entity. Okay, so that fixes that. Let's go over here, and that's right. Gotta uncomment that out. So now we're actually using that. Okay, it's coming together.
Ifs here, we're gonna have to do that. I guess we're gonna have to do that right away. let's just do this for now. There we go. So it looks like we're compiling fine. We just need these actual tests. So this one right here, we have to test for overlap, and this one right here, we have to test to see whether the entity is an empty space entity. And so we have a way, very trivially, to test if it's an empty space entity. It just is whether or not this traversable flag is set. So basically, if this test entity has the traversable flag set, then we know we're doing basically a maximum extents movement test, right? And then what we want to do is, before we test against this guy, we have to verify that you were actually inside him, right? You have to have been inside the bounding box in order to do the move. And so what we want to do is sort of take our overlap testing that we were doing here. We want that overlap testing to occur inside the loop. And what's interesting about that is this is actually something that we probably should have been doing in the loop anyway, where we are handling the overlap in a more intelligent way. So it's kind of something that probably is good for us to have been doing regardless. And we do have a little bit of an oddity there, which is that we kind of want all of the things that you're overlapping at any given time to have an effect on you. And again, this is just, the complexity of really doing motion correctly in games is it's very, very complicated. As you've seen so far, we've spent a bunch of time on it, way more time than we spend on a lot of different things that we had to spec out. But I don't really want to stop pushing on a lot of these things, because usually what happens in any particular piece of code, especially when you're working on something that's relatively complicated, is things get very complex, and then you start to find ways in which they can simplify down, right? And so, sometimes proliferating out and really like handling all the edge cases and thinking it through and improving the capabilities of something, even though that ends up with this big, messy nightmare in some cases, that's actually not something to be too afraid of, as long as you are then willing to go through and go, all right, now that we've seen the nightmare, how do we turn it into a pleasant dream, right? And so that's what happens a lot of times in code if you push through it. And so I would encourage people not to be scared about how ugly some of this stuff is to handle, and don't just go, oh, let's just go do something simpler, because a lot of times in the end what we come up with might actually be quite simple. Like, we may be able to then reduce down and end up with something that is actually pretty simple in the end, but it took us that sort of circuitous route to get there, because we have to see all the complexity first before we can have the insights that make things simpler. And we've seen that happen already on the stream a couple times in other places. So that's why I would always encourage you to push through that. Do go solve the problems, no matter how janky your solutions end up being, because once you have them all solved, that puts you in a really good position to come up with more clever, streamlined solutions that still get all the benefits. That you're at a perfect point to be able to do that once you've seen it all, right? And before you've actually gone and solved them all, you don't really have the necessary sort of perspective and of how everything really works in practice. So yeah. So what we want to do here is take a look at, let's take a little step back and just think about that overlapping bit just a little bit. So as we go through our iterations, on each iteration, right, we are doing this overlap testing, and we're seeing, we've got, what entities are we inside, right? What space filling entities are we enclosed by at any given time? And those entities that we are enclosed in, we want to take a look at those sort of, how should I say this? We want to take a look at those in sort of also a, so as I think about this more, I'm thinking maybe you don't want to double up that notion, though. Like, maybe we don't ever really want to say that something that encloses a space can also be a trigger. We may want those to actually be separate because they mean different things. So I guess I'll put that aside for now. I guess really all we do need to do is just...
I don't understand why test while normal... Did he just move it out of there and drop it so that it's always inside of these loops? Well, I guess it should be inside of... this whole conditional here, right there. I don't know if it matters one way or the other to redeclare it there, or is it just using it? I mean, either way, yeah, it just seems kind of pointless to declare it in here and not keep the declaration up here. But don't want to get too needlessly different from Casey's code. If I can't see an obvious benefit to doing it one way or the other, better safe than sorry.
Pull out, oops, what did I do? Did I hit? No, I didn't. All right, we're fine. I guess really all we do need to do is pull out the notion of the overlap test into something else so that we don't have to do it multiple times. So basically this stuff right here, this testing, that's something that we probably want to loft out. So let's go ahead and nerf this for 1 second so that I can pull out the other test and verify it well enough. So let's go ahead and do that. So let's end if this. We'll go back in here and just say, so the, oops, that's no good. What did I do wrong there? I managed to make it, oh, right. With our tmin set to zero, tmax set to 0, you'll never be able to move anywhere. So temporarily, I need to set this tmax to 1 so that you can actually move, right? There we go. So this...
We are all over the place today. It's not totally, oh well, that was, why is this happening? It's just, this change that Casey's doing today is a bit dizzying for me. So when I get down here, I'll just overwrite tmax to be, well, yeah, the way to do this would be just, oh dang it. Copy that, comment that out for now, say it's 1, and now we should be good, except that That has to be commented out too. Just a lot of minute change for, oh, that's not good. Yeah, I guess it's kind of busted because we're still in the middle of making changes, right? But now we're getting stuck on everything again.
This is the thing that's doing, that actually operates on overlap right now, is that moving up and down. So I want to go ahead and do the overlap test to make the overlap test be better. And so let's go ahead and do that overlap test, because it's got a to-do on here that says handle multivolumes. Let's handle the multivolumes and then pull it out into its own test that allows you to check for overlap really easily. Right?
Okay. I guess I didn't, I don't remember if I checked to see if I can actually still go up and down between the levels, so I'm going to do that really quick. Looks like we're good. Jonathan said, I play the drums, but that's mostly a hobby for fun, although sometimes while thinking drum and bass in the background helps me stay in the zone. Oh yeah, for sure. Music is definitely the thing that keeps me on track the most when I'm just going about my work day and I need to just, you know, stay in that mode of getting things done. I played guitar for a long time, mostly also as a hobby, but I've also wrote, you know, a fair number of songs over the years, some better than others. But what I always want to do was actually to take those song ideas that I was writing, just, you know, kind of noodling on guitar, and turn them into fully realized, fully produced songs. And for the longest time, I really wanted to pursue it, but I didn't know how. And partially also because I just didn't have the confidence in myself or the faith in my ability to actually take the songwriting and the performing to the next level. Part of that was, it's twofold. It's like not having enough faith in either the performance side of it or the, and also the ability to actually like write well enough. But, over the years, and also just looking at these other things that I've managed to do in life and succeed in, I've realized that I actually can do this thing where I focus on music and taking these song ideas that I've had and learning how to produce them to be the best they can be. Now, I still think that I have a ton of practicing and iteration to do to get the performance there, so that when I actually go to record it, right, it shows up on the track and sounds better than I ever even imagined, right? But it's not going to happen overnight. I have to define a process for what that looks like to get there. The same way I defined essentially a process for getting anywhere else I've managed to get over the years in terms of like, be it financial or family success. And so, but yeah, it was just kind of working on this series and doing something a little bit more creative over the past couple months made me realize that, like, oh, I can go and do this thing. I totally can. But it's gonna be a lot of hard work, not any less so than anything else I've done has been a lot of hard work, but it's pretty exciting for me to go and do that. I just have to go and do it, you know? I have to go do the hard part. I've decided to go and do it. Now I got to actually go and do it. Yeah, he makes a lot of little bursts of changes. It's pretty rough to keep up with. Yeah, it just gets more and more tedious, and that's why I've been thinking I'm going to change the stream format like I'm intending to, because then I can just focus on doing the changes, kind of understanding what went into them and why they need to be made, write some notes down, and then I can come back every week and talk about it. And just, you know, gradually make progress that way. And it'll allow me to experiment and then talk about what I've experimented with on stream. It'll just be kind of like more of like a devlog format, like I said. But there's no actual game being made here. It's just kind of documenting my progress as time goes on. Galactic Pass said, good luck. Thank you. Yeah. A little bit of luck will go a long way, but mostly it's going to be on me to just do the work. So we'll see. I'm excited about it. It's been a long time coming, I think.
Right. So in order to check for overlap, what we want to do here is move this entity rect inside, so that what we're going to do is we loop over the volumes of both things like we were doing before in another one of these double loops, right? It's literally this thing right here, this loop right here, so we could just reuse that, that verbiage. That is sort of the way in which we were doing that testing. So what we want...
I guess I might as well go and pull that out. This right here, right? For volume in collision volumes, and then he goes through and pulls it out and then does the same thing for the test. So that's pretty easy. But then the test volume, okay, yeah, he just pulls it out that way. Okay, super easy for us to do. We just throw that in there. And then I guess we're just going to do this, but we're going to do it with the volumes. Is that right?
What I want to do is test the, what are our two things here? There's test entity, so it's exactly the same as it was before. So we've got the two different entities. We now have the two different volumes. And so what we want to do is make this code happen. And then at the end, we say if overlapped, we handle that overlap, right? So we'll basically say bool overlap equals false. And we can early out as soon as we know that we overlap, because we don't need to keep checking for overlap. So what we want to do is say, you know, if we aren't overlapped, in each of these loops, then we'll do that. And that way, when we set overlap to true, here, it'll break out of both loops and be done. So here we are inside our volume testing. We can do...
I'm getting so disoriented looking at this code right now. I don't know why. Okay, so we have that can overlap check. I see. Okay, just... and what is that? That's like 12 lines of code. I can do in 2 what he does in 12, just because he can't pull the volume straight out of those loops. Okay, so up above here, there we go, is where we say overlapped. We'll just say it's a bool, because it's going to default to false anyway. And then we get that entity rect out. Where did that go? Oh, yeah, we need to do this after the fact, because it's based on the individual volume. So that... Oh, okay, yeah. So instead of working off the total volume, we're going off of each of the individual volumes. And then if the rectangles did oversect, we override overlapped, and then we only handle that if it did. Okay. Oh no. I lost that code. We need it. Okay. So that, why is that undeclared? I see. This all needs to be wrapped by that. Okay. But this, that's right, goes in there. Yeah. So instead of this, it's going to be each individual volume's offset and dim. Right, just like that.
do it exactly the way that we were doing it before, right? Instead of doing total volume in both cases, all we really have to do is switch to using the two different volumes that we said. So we essentially have entity volume, I believe. What is it? No, it's just volume. So we have volume, like so, right? Oops. So we have volume, and then we've got the test entity rect is going to be the test volume. There we go. And now we are looping over both volumes and testing them both, and then we are seeing whether or not those volumes intersect. And we can actually do it just straight ahead. Since we know we break out immediately upon overlap being true, we can make it a little bit more concise. So there we go. So now we've got a relatively concise overlap check that we're doing here. And so what we should be able to do is now pull this out into its own function, right? So let's go ahead and compile that first, make sure this works okay. Bool 32 volume, forcing value to true. Oops, I typed that wrong. And by the way, this is why I hate bool and always type bool 32. I don't like these warnings, right? I don't want the compiler to do those quote-unquote optimizations there, or lack of optimizations, to do those things that turn things into 0 and 1 for no reason. So I just want everything to pass through regardless of how it was computed. So, all right, now we've got that. Let's pull it out, although I guess I'll test it first just to make sure that it still works. It does, so that's good.
All right, I will also make sure that things aren't horribly broken after that. So far, so good. Still kind of getting stuck on stuff, but it's because we're still in the middle of all these changes. Yeah, I wonder exactly when this bug would have been introduced where the rock now gets stuck on the monster. That's too bad.
And we can go in here and pull that out into some kind of a function like internal bool 32, entities overlap. Sorry, I was thinking about some things in my head. So I might want to do something else here, which is introduce a little... Okay, so I had a thought. I'll share that thought with you in one moment. So let's go ahead and pull this out first before I share that thought with you. So let's say, okay, we've got entities overlap. What we want to do here is pass in the two entities. So we have an entity and a test entity, right? And maybe I'll upgrade the nomenclature of this a little bit as well. So we'll call this result equals false. And we'll just do this result, 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 and then return result, right? Oops, sim region. So overlapped. This will now just be if entities overlap, and it'll pass the two entities in, like so. And again, this is classic compression-oriented programming.
Okay, so I didn't actually catch. It's all of the volume looping stuff. Looks like that gets pulled in there. So, gosh, what is it? Test entity. Yeah, so everything starting right here. And then it's just going to overwrite a result. We can say overlapped equals entities overlap like this. Entity, test entity, and then just dump that in there. Right to the result. And then that should all just work fine. Oh, I guess this makes more sense to just do that. It feels pretty good. And that's right, we don't need that anymore. So now we should be running just the same. Little sanity check to make sure that I didn't break things, just pulling that code out. Okay. Awesome.
In, like so. And again, this is classic compression-oriented programming here, right? I'm just looking at things, pulling them out when I know I want to use them multiple times, and letting that guide the design of everything, right? I'm not thinking about the design at all. I'm letting literally the reuse, what I want to call at any given time, drives that sort of upward motion. I really like that style of programming. I find that it works really well, even early in the morning like this. So now this is much simpler and easier to read as well. We can even sort of double this up. We can almost just say this, right? Like so, and that just makes this loop really nice and pretty simple. We now handle multi-volumes, so that's pretty good. And
oh, yeah, I guess that does make more sense to do that. No point in making two separate, whoa, conditionals. What is going on with me today? Fingers aren't working. The fingers and the brain are not working so good. And then we just get rid of that, pull that over, and we're good.
And I don't know what we want to do about this. We'll still leave that as a to-do for a little bit later on. So this looks pretty good here. What I was going to say is I wonder if what we want to do is move our epsilon into here so we can say that there is an epsilon, basically a enlargement region, if you will, in terms of testing whether these overlap. And I feel like we could even say that there was an epsilon in all 3 dimensions. I know it's a little bit weird, but this is just thought I was having. And so by default, if you ask if they overlap, there is no epsilon, but later we could make there be one, right? And it's really easy for us to do because all we have to do is take one of the volumes that we're using for the overlap test and add the epsilon to it, right? And that enlarges that guy by a little bit, which means that there's now some sort of fudge in the overlap. There's a kind of an extra boundary there, right? And the reason that I think that's kind of interesting was because that would allow us to do that sort of the overlap to be a little bit forgiving in those things you're allowed to move through, so that we can do precise stopping on those room boundary guys. We can do precise stopping on them, but we can also figure out which one you're inside much more easily. And so I kind of like that idea. I'm going to go ahead and stick with that for now. And so what we would do in here now is we'd re-enable this guy, like so. And we can set this to basically entities overlap. And what we'll do there is pass entity and test entity like we were doing before. And assuming...
Why is my brain not working today? Oh, I'm missing a parentheses. Parenthesis? Singular? How did that get deleted? This looks terrible, but I had to do it because it wouldn't all fit on one line. And that just... I don't know. I'm going to totally give up and just switch to using the OLS code formatting whenever I get around to figuring out whatever that hotkey is. I've been so lazy about it.
If the 2 entities overlap, then we actually will use that Tmax to see what the furthest we can go is inside that entity. Now what I wanted to do here is, again, use that enlargement region. And so what I'll probably do is say, okay, we have our overlap epsilon, right? In fact, I'll just say overlap epsilon.
Okay, I didn't see that he had re-enabled all this code. And then, okay, so this here is checking entities overlap, test entity, and the entity get passed in there.
The overlap epsilon will be something fairly small for now, probably. I don't know exactly what it should be. This is definitely something we'll have to look at in more detail later. But basically, we'll just have, we could even do this. You might want to make a utility function for that. Something that just spams one value out to all of the things in a vector. But so,
thankfully, I can kind of just do that using Odin's kind of hidden splat technique. I don't know. Crouching Odin hidden splat. I don't know what to call that. I don't even know if it's documented anywhere that I've seen it. I don't think it's in the overview where you can just splat out a value like that for a vector. But it's pretty nice. I like it.
All right, that does the overlap test. There we go, missing a parentheses. That does the overlap test and allows us to make this loop properly. In theory now, oops. I really need a better typing setup here. I always find myself askew in the way that I'm kind of crammed in here at this desk. All right. In theory, now we could actually, well, no, that's...
Still can't move. So let's see, Tmax test. What happened there? Were we not using that anywhere in here? No, we are. What happened there? Did I just not bother to see if compiling would work again? Kind of seems that way. Okay, so that all looks fine. And then this we want to be 0 again. So if I build and run this, I should get the same problem as him and just be stuck where we start. No. Huh. Well, we are getting stuck on things, which is bad. Yep. Things have just gotten more and more broken. Because the changes we're making are just, like we're trying to add capability here, but it's coming at a cost of sanity.
Not good at all. We never seem to be able to get past our T-Max. What's wrong? All right, so now it's time to debug this. I was hoping that might just work, but of course, it never does. So let's take a look at what's going on here. Just spot check.
I just realized this check here has to be greater than, T result is greater than or equal to 0. T-Max test is less than T result. Okay, that's right. And then we check the Y against the wall, min Y and max Y. We set this to be, oh, T-Max test is just T result. That's right. Because, I mean, it's the T-Max, not the T-min. And then, so that might actually fix our problem where we don't have the same bug as him. And then that all looks good. Okay, so what's going on here? T epsilon, where was that declared? Up here. Yeah. Yeah, he still declares it, but he's not using it either. Okay. And the Lord said, let me be stuck. Nope, I am not stuck. I mean, I get stuck on things, but yeah. It never goes the way you want it to.
Before we go debug this, make sure we didn't do anything obviously stupid. So when we're doing our T-Max test, we need to set our T-Max test to 0. We assume that that's the minimum you could possibly move. In fact, these, I guess, are technically T-Max test, T-min test. These don't really need to be out here. And neither does hit this, right? These are actually internal things. So these are actually like here, right? And down here, like so. And this one doesn't have a T-Max test, and this one doesn't have a T-min test, right?
Okay, sure. So over here, let me go up here and grab those. So right here, we drop that in, but there's no T-min test here, so we can well, yeah, just drop that down. Above there, and then hit this. It's added back in. Test while normal is actually down there.
And this one doesn't have a T-Max test, and this one doesn't have a T-min test. Right?
Okay.
So yeah, in fact, and I'm going to move over here to this side so that my head is not constantly in the way. So when we come through here and we do these tests, we're testing to see, we're accepting the largest value, it looks like, which is what we wanted. So I'm not sure what the problem is exactly here. It could be that our entities overlap call is not working properly. I guess we do have another thing that's kind of stupid, which is that, you know, we actually probably, since we're already looping over the two volumes, that loop, those volume loops, are really set up wrong, now that I think about it, right? We don't actually need to loop over, the volumes so just thinking this through, right? So up at the top here, and in fact, I guess this can collide is exactly probably why we're not getting in here. So I didn't really think this through enough as I need to. basically this can collide is really something to be done as an internal check, and furthermore, the entities overlap check doesn't need to be done per volume like this, right? The entities overlap check can be done once for the entities up at the top, and so really this loop, this can be done all the way out here, right? This is actually being done up here. So let's reorganize this a little bit. That's being done up there, and this part right here looks a little bit more like its partner there. And similarly, this can collide, right, is part of this check here too, right? So essentially what we need to do is out at the top here, we need to do that determination of whether or not this is something worth considering, and then Traversable tells us which one we're going to do on it. So in some sense, we have something that's sort of like, if it's traversable...
You are killing me with this, Casey. This is bananas. I don't... So we're... Okay. Whatever. Let's just pull that out, I guess. And then over here, we're going to throw that check into this one. And then it's the same thing for, what the hell? Oh, I didn't even catch that. That is part of that. Okay. And then, traversable over here. Same thing. No. There we go. Okay. There, is that it?
And the entities overlap, right? Then that's one reason we might do it, or if you can collide, right? And so I think the test we actually want to do is out at the top here. We want to say, if it's a traversable entity, right, and the entities overlap, then we would do our collision processing. Or if there are things that can collide with each other, then we would do our collision processing. And those are the two reasons that we might start checking the volumes, right? But otherwise, we wouldn't do that. We got to do our epsilon up here, right? So that is really the loop.
Okay. Just repeating exactly what he just said. If an entity is traversable and it overlaps, and is that right? And yeah, if the test entity is traversable and it overlaps with the entity that we are trying to move, or they can collide. This is so jank. I can barely look at it. I can barely stand to look at this code right now. And then, like you said, we got to pull the overlap epsilon out of here. Okay, that'll at least fix some of this terrible indentation we have happening down there, but we'll see.
We want it, I think, or at least closer to it. And then the rest of this stuff does what it does, right? That seems a little more sane to me. So let's take a look. And now we're actually working a little more properly. But we don't really have any places right now that we can test against our blue line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here.
Okay, so the test for me is to see whether our collision detection is now back in somewhat working order and that we can grind against the walls and not have our hero get stuck on them. But yeah, I don't know. Actually, we got rid of the entry into this whole conditional. So what is the if then now? I must have missed it. Where'd it go?
Or at least closer to it. And then the rest of this stuff does what it does.
I see. So that actually shouldn't have gone away. This can. Yeah, so this is just going to look like this. But to do the T-max thing, we still need to see if traversable is in.
Or at least closer to it. And then the rest.
The test entity flags. There is no is there. Okay. Whoa. That is not at all the word that I was trying to type. What happened? Jonathan said, surprised your sanity is still intact after all these episodes. Man, like, me too. Actually. It's definitely a marathon, not a sprint. And that's why I've decided to cool off on the frequency. Because if the pace is just me dealing with these kinds of problems day in and day out, just to keep moving the stream forward, I'm not going to want to do it anymore over time. Like, I'm just going to get to a point where I'm like, I'm not doing this anymore. So I have to, temper my expectations and know that the place that I'm trying to get to, where I think I'm trying to get to, is just not going to happen overnight. So we'll cool it off and just take it in stride, go slow and steady, win the race that way. How do I like Odin so far, by the way? Still really enjoying it. It has not... What's been getting in the way, and this is a good thing, what's been getting in the way of me advancing is just my own conceptual grasp on the stuff that Casey's getting across with all of this collision detection and world geometry type stuff. It's just very abstract, and the fact that that's what my brain is having to contend with most, not how to do the stuff that we're doing in Odin, because it's just, it's a lot of like if, this, and understanding like the, the math involved and all these things. So there's no elaborate language feature in Odin that I could reach for that would make this stuff any easier to solve than Odin is making it for me, already making it for me in the first place. So yeah, I would say it's awesome in that I barely even recognize that Odin has anything interesting going on. Every opportunity that it has to make things easier, it just seems to be easier. And I don't even think about it so much anymore. And so that's why I think to some extent the nature of the stream has changed, is because when it started, I was still pretty new to Odin. And now we've just done a bunch of different stuff. I've learned enough to, where if something interesting that is specific to Odin pops up, I want to be able to talk about that a little bit more at length and not gloss over it and just keep on moving forward with the stream, right? Like there has to be just a little bit more focus around the actual learning opportunities that this series has been providing for me, instead of getting stuck on like did I do this thing that Casey did the way that he did it, and if not, where else could the bug be coming from? Like it just shouldn't be about whether I'm copying the code or not copying, but porting the code from C and C++ in the way that Casey is writing to Odin. It should be less about that and more about like, how does Odin make doing this easier or more intuitive or whatever, or what is it about the actual game programming concept that's interesting to, what can you take away from conceptually, again, versus just like, oh, that was a stupid bug. Wish he didn't have to, spend 15 minutes on stream finding that. You know what I mean? It's just, I think we're at an inflection point here where if the series is to survive, I have to adapt a little bit and do things differently. That's all. But Odin is great.
So this stuff does what it does, right? That seems a little more sane to me. So let's take a look. And now we're actually working a little more properly.
Oh, that's right. I needed to test and see if any of this worked. And that's right. I did not get rid of the original declarations of these here. And I guess I can just ditch all of this code, but I'll wait. I want to make sure that we're actually colliding properly before I do that. Yeah, that's bad. This is all very bad. I'm getting stuck in the trees now. Damn. Could be that I did something wrong with this stuff. Let me see here. Rel, delta, min, max, delta, min, max, normal. No, that looks right. Yeah, see, like this is just another example. I've got this stupid bug that I shouldn't have, even though I thought I did everything the way that Casey did it, here I am again. Right? Like, that's not interesting or worth spending any more time than it takes for me to fix it. It has nothing to do with like what we're actually trying to learn here.
But we don't really have any places right now that we can test against our blue line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here to our thing that creates the world, right? Here's handmade.cpp. And when we do add wall, I'm just going to go ahead and say that we're just not going to add walls. We're not going to add walls to rooms past the first room, right? So basically, if we have screen index here.
I wonder if I'm setting the wrong wall normal thing. Hold on while I check. Yeah, no, that all looks right. T-stop gets set to be... Oh, well, I don't know if we're using T-stop. Did he start using that? He did. Okay, maybe this was it. See, I would be much less likely to catch one of these, or I would be much less likely to make that mistake right there if I wasn't distracted trying to make sure that my stream isn't blowing up. You know? Let's see if that fixed everything. Not everything. We still have this other problem, but oh no. Well, I mean, now I have the bug that he had a couple minutes ago, but I thought we fixed that, right, when we did this check up here. So, I don't know. Let's see, hit this. We're still not using this test P. I forgot all about this. He calculated this test P, never used it, and it's still there in his code, doing nothing. Oh, this should be... How did that happen? That should have been the min. Maybe that was my whole problem. Yeah. Okay, let's try again. See, these mistakes can't be happening. It's not productive. And we're still busted, so... Terrible, terrible feeling. Let me check this real quick. Make sure. Is there anything else? So we set the test wall normal. We say that we hit this. If we hit it, then we do this stuff. Yada, yada. We have our T-stop. If T-min is less than T-max, we set it to be the T-min. That's that. That's that. Otherwise, set it to be the T-max. Set the entity position by multiplying the T-stop out. And then we get into here. See if we stop on collision, and if we do, yeah, none of the rest of this has changed. But down in here, we do that relative Z min and max corner test. I guess I can just go ahead and get rid of all this. Screw it. Whatever happens, happens. So we just define all our walls. That all looks plenty fine. If the test entity is traversable, we check all the walls. Where did that epsilon go? Oh, he's not. Yeah, he's not using that. Check the delta x. Set the t result to be this. That all looks good. And then down here, we set tmin to be the tmax test, and the test while normal. While normal max becomes test while normal. Hit entity max becomes, yeah, the test entity. I don't know. That all looks exactly how he did it. That's messed up.
This stuff does what it does, right? That seems a little more sane to me. So let's take a look. And now we're actually working a little more properly. But we don't really have any places right now that we can test against our blue line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here to our thing that creates the world, right? Here's handmade.cpp. And when we do add wall, I'm just going to go ahead and say that we're just not going to add walls. We're not going to add walls to rooms past the first room, right? So basically, if we have screen index here, I'm just going to get rid of those walls everywhere else. So I'm going to do if screen index equals 0, we add walls, otherwise we don't add any walls. And so that means that we should have a world that pretty much only has those walls at the beginning, right? So there's the walls, and we are colliding with them. That's good. We're colliding with all the other people here and so on. And then we kind of walk up here, and now we're in a place that doesn't have any walls, right? And so we're walking around, and so let's make sure that we can't go outside of our blue line. And we can't, which is what we wanted. That's a good thing. It looks pretty solid at the moment. Although we do have, there's some stickiness that I don't like. I'm not sure why we're getting, and that feels like we're able to do some things I don't think we should be able to do. So yeah, we're getting some stickiness there, right? We're sticking. And I believe that sticking is probably because of the way that we're doing that epsilon handling. We're not, you're allowed to go, because we're not setting you inset from the space on the epsilon, our sliding stuff is a little bit more broken. Let's verify that that's actually the case, and we'll have to think about how we want to handle that. We really don't want those epsilons in there anyway. So, you know, that's something that's definitely on my radar of stuff that we want to clean up, but I don't have a really good idea of how we want to do it yet. So that's going to have to be something we set aside some time to think it through and do something nice with it. But basically, it's this part right here, you know, where we basically want to say this exact thing that we were saying before. We would still need to do it for the other side. And now, you know, we get that sliding, which is what we want. So...
Oh. What? I see. Okay. Yeah, so that somehow... Well, never mind. It's actually... It is right here. But that kind of seems like it was the whole problem. I don't know what to make of this.
You know, where we basically want to say this exact thing that we were saying before. We would still need to do it for the other side. And now, you know, we get that sliding, which is what we want.
Why was it working for him then before? T epsilon. Where is T epsilon? Okay, we are still using it. Gotcha. Okay, well. Yeah. Well, maybe the collision detection, maybe we'll glide now, but we're just stuck, which we don't want to be stuck. Okay. We're so bugged out today that I forgot what bug I was even stuck on.
So, you know, I would consider this a bit of a success. I think this came out relatively well. It's doing what we want it to do, which is preventing you from ever getting outside, and I like that. And so that's a good start. That's a pretty good start, I think. Now, I'm not sure why we're stopping in here though. That's a bit odd. I wonder if that's just because what is that T epsilon? The T epsilon is the same as our overlap epsilon, which is not what we would want, right? We'd have to make those be different in order for this to work, for you to be able to cross through these properly, right? Well, I'm not sure why. It seems odd, right? I'm not sure why we can't cross over that boundary. That's definitely a bit janky, because I can go through that boundary. I can go through that boundary in one direction, but not the other direction. All right, so we definitely have some bugness there. Something we'll have to think through. Take the stairs. Is this a stairwell? Is the stairwell up or down? Stairwell down. So yeah, so why can we not? That's interesting. It's the same. We can't go backwards. I wonder if that's just an order dependency thing too. So if we have a bug and it's just the order in which these two things were added, you can go from an earlier entity to a later entity, but not vice versa. You know what I mean? I'm not sure why that would be though, because since we're taking the maximum hit, is it just is it because, is there something weird about the way this overlap works? Like you would think, we must just have a simple bug actually, because you would think, especially if, so we're in the situation, it should repro right here, right? Yeah. You would think that if I made the overlap test very permissive, so I said like, oh yeah, the overlap epsilon is massive, right? That now we would definitely be able to pass through there because it should find that we are enclosed in that other guy and his Tmax should be very large. So the question is, with that overlap epsilon very large, why is it not possible to find a larger Tmax there? And I don't know the answer to that question. It's very strange, right? And so when we come in here and we're looking through these walls, we find whatever our Tmax test is less than whatever the result is for this particular wall. We then accept it. Yeah, I don't know. That doesn't seem logical to me. So I guess what we need to do is step through this and see what's going on here, because I don't have it, and maybe it's just the early morning stream. Maybe it should actually be obvious what's going on, and I'm just not seeing it. That seems like probably a pretty likely thing for sleepy time programming. And we've got about 7 minutes left, so I think we've got some time to step through here and see what's going on.
Wanted to see. Oh man, where did that check go? Okay, so he definitely wraps this check here. Like both of these things have to be true, which is what I thought. Both of these things have to be true, or they can collide. Yeah, none of that is different. And then we do the Minkowski stuff. Yeah, none of that has changed. It's got to be a really subtle thing that I did wrong. Maybe it's in the entities overlap code. But that code doesn't look too complicated. Seems like that should be fine.
So the question is, with that overlap epsilon morning stream, maybe it should actually be obvious what's going on, and I'm just not seeing it. That seems like probably a pretty likely thing for sleepy time programming. And we've got about 7 minutes left, so I think we've got some time to step through here and see what's going on. So let's take a look at pushing forwards through there. So I'm going to go ahead and do this Tmax test. Let's see what's our
Jonathan said, to be honest, I thought the point of streaming it was to be a log of every mistake and success I made as a dev archive. Yeah. I would still try and capture that to the best of my abilities for sure. Like when there's something that I struggle with, I want to be able to capture that and be like, this is the thing, right? But me failing to properly port code over as he's writing it in real time is not a mistake that's worth even documenting, if that makes sense. Like that's just because that doesn't have anything to do with getting a better understanding of like the actual thing we're doing here. That's just like code is in flight on my end and his end, and I'm just not tracking all of that properly. So yeah, that's but totally. I'm still going to try and document those when I do get stuck on something conceptually, right? I still want to be able to speak to those things, because that is the point, is, okay, what was actually hard to understand? What did I do to like fix what was broken about my understanding? Right now, I'm getting less of that because I'm getting stuck on fixing these stupid mistakes that I make. And he said, but yeah, I understand that worrying about streaming / comments while trying to follow along is distracting at best, especially when chat isn't being helpful. Yeah, and like, I don't think, I have zero expectation that anybody watching in chat can help me find these bugs. And a lot of the time it's been disjointed anyways, because I don't find the bug on stream anyways. I got to go do other stuff, right? And then I find and fix the bug later, and then I talk about it on the next stream anyways. So it's already like disjointed in that sense, is that you're not going to see me have that aha moment. This was what was wrong. Sometimes when I do fix a mistake like that, it does help me understand conceptually what was going wrong, because then I could look at the mistake and be like, oh, that's why I was seeing this behavior. But again, there's no reason why I can't talk about those things after the fact. You don't need to see that happen live for me to be able to speak to it and articulate why it was important. So yeah, we'll see. I might try the other format for a while and then be like, nah, we're just going to do like one episode at a time, but we're going to try and get through one a week. So that way I have time to really make sure the material sticks before I move on. We'll see. I'll probably play around with it a little bit, but for now we just have to get through 5 minutes of Casey debugging.
Yeah. So I don't know if this will be the best test because, of course, I think our tmin and tmax might already be small, but I'm not sure about that. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, we have our tmin and our tmax. We're coming through here to test these wall normals. This is somebody that we're already inside. And so let's take a look. What is our t result equal to? Okay, our t result is massive, which is fine. So we accept it, and our tmax test is very large. We don't have any other collisions with that, and so that's fine. We accept that as our new tmax, and off we go. And we've set our hit entity. Rank, we come through here. Is that the only one we're going to? No, we're going to test against another one, so that's good. Off we go. So now we're testing against a separate one. So resetting a tmax test to 0 again. And now we find a much closer hit. So in theory, that will get accepted as tmax test now, right? But we should ignore that hit, I would think. Oh, no. Oh, yeah, that's it right there. This has to get initialized to what our current max is. That was dumb. Yeah, so that's the problem.
I see. So we do, and we should be doing the same thing for the tmin test. And that's probably, oh no. Yeah. Okay, we were doing the same thing for the tmin test. So that's not going to fix whatever my frozen in place issue is. At least I doubt it, yeah.
Problem. Right, we weren't initializing it to the best one we'd found so far. So it just happened to be whichever one was next. Yeah, so then those are fine. And I'm not sure if we really need to have that permissive overlap test anymore, but let's double check and see. I'm just curious. Yeah, so that passes through properly now and still stops in the boundary. So that seems pretty good.
What was that?
So I'm not sure if we really need to have that permissive overlap test anymore, but let's double check and see. I'm just curious. Yeah, so that passes through properly now and still stops in the boundary. So that seems pretty good. But, you know, it's still a little janky, certainly, to say the least. But we're definitely getting there. All right, so that's pretty good. And so these now serve as boundaries properly. And so the next thing that we will want to do, and I don't think I want to start this today, this will be next week's thing, is to actually start playing with Z levels now. Because now we can go ahead and do our sort of testing against these to drop us down to wherever the floor would be. And that's pretty, you know, that's going to be a pretty significant code change as well. And so now that we've got this working for the most part, I think we want to kind of stop and go ahead and move into the Q&A. So that's pretty good. I think we made pretty good progress there. Yeah, so let's do that. Let's go ahead and do the Q&A.
Well, as per usual, we're just like, we're so short of having a W, you know, whatever this issue is that has us trapped in place. I'm going to have to go back and see specifically what he did, but I thought all it was doing these checks up front. You know, and then he was able to move freely after spawn, and I couldn't even totally put together why moving that out fixed that problem. But yeah, the rest of this just looks like it's exactly how he did it. Yeah, who knows? But hopefully I'll have a fix for it by Wednesday when I come back to work on day 81. Damn. Such a shame. And like this happening over and over again is telling me something, you know? It's because I don't want to get stuck on like trying to figure out what this bug is when it's probably not an interesting bug. I want to be able to speak to and have conversations on stream about, what actually was the thing, not what is this bug, but what is the thing that we're actually doing in this episode that makes today interesting. And what we did do was the collision detection change that he was talking about last week. Yeah, handling traversables in the collision loop, which is simply adding, well, I don't know, obviously it has to do with this work that we did here, but we're adding in the T-Max stuff. He did a whole Blackboard explanation of it, I think, in the very last day, in day 79, where he talked about adding this in. And so that's what all this was for, but, regrettably, I can't see exactly where adding this change in has led us to have this problem, which again he had earlier. He had this exact same problem earlier, but maybe I missed one other little change that he made, and it wasn't just pulling out those checks. But whatever it is, I'll figure it out, and we'll keep on forging ahead, one day at a time. So. Have a good rest of your day wherever you are. Thanks again for sticking it out with me and hanging out and watching me suffer. But I'll see you in the next one on Wednesday or whenever it is you show up again. Until then, take care. I'll see you.